Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. I don't know if you can put a thumbs up if you can hear me. But a very warm welcome to the session this afternoon. My name is Helen Tomlinson. I head up the talent and development team at the Adecco Group. Thank you for the thumbs up. Head up the talent and development team. That is my day job. My passion, if you like, is heading up our gender forum for the Adecco Group, and that has given me the opportunity to do some work around the menopause internally within the organisation, launching our policy, creating it, embedding it, making it part of our day-to-day conversation. And I also have the privilege of being able to do that for our clients as well, as a value add activity. So going out and supporting our clients in creating their policies and embedding them in their organisations. So the session today, whilst I talked originally about doing it on just purely creating menopause policy, because that's incredibly important in an organisation, and something that I'm lobbying government to make a legal requirement for organisations of 250 people and above. And I know that sounds like a big number if you're an SME organisation, but actually with things like this with government, you've kind of got to start somewhere. And then, so to say organisations of 250 plus will get it over the threshold easier than if you said all organisations. So it's kind of eating an elephant, chunking it up into pieces. So I was going to do a session purely on writing the policy, but then actually I started to think that the policy is a great thing to have, but at the end of the day, it is purely a PDF, a set of words on some paper, something that people refer to in an HR function when they need to refer to it. But what that policy does is, in our experience, create a catalyst for the conversation around menopause to be opened within an organisation. It created a culture change, and that for me is the most important thing. So whilst I will talk about the policy, it's just part of a much bigger piece of work that has really changed how we work as an organisation and allow people to bring their whole self to work, which is so important, both from somebody's well-being, from attracting talent, for retaining talent, but more importantly, it gives people that feeling of belonging, which is so vital, particularly at this stage in their life. So I will touch on the policy, but for me, it's only part of the broader picture. So I've got my colleague and friend Kelly on the call today, who is going to be driving the slides for us. So as you can see, she's already sprung into action without me even asking. So thank you, Kelly. So when we talk and laugh about it, we learn and relax. It's a life transition, not a disease. And I am a firm believer in that, but I absolutely know there are times when you feel like anything but laughing. And that is the whole point of what we are trying to do, to make it easier for people to start the conversation that gets them to a stage where they think, I don't know why I was so worried about opening up that conversation, or I didn't know what was happening to me and I feel so much better. So it really is about that cultural piece. Thank you. So we'll talk about introduction to menopause, what is the menopause, and how you can support your colleagues to get them through the menopause. So when I do these sessions, these slides are a bit of an amalgamation really of what I have done internally, and partly around the policy, but partly about the upskilling of people in an organisation to help them better understand it and better be able to support colleagues. And when I go out and do client workshops in organisations, I always kick it off with what I call menopause bingo. And the icebreaker that we do is around, can you name me the top 5 or the top most popular, a bit like Family Fortunes, the most popular menopause symptoms that spring to mind? And generally they come up with the same 4 or 5 symptoms time and time again. And I've done this recently with a group of predominantly, well, exclusively male managers in a manufacturing environment. And when I got there, I could tell that they were literally rigid with fear, some of them. They would rather have been anywhere than in this room with on the big screen in front of them, menopause matters across it. So I had to do something to create a bit of an icebreaker. So I asked them what their top 5 symptoms were that they felt that were most applicable to the menopause. And then when they'd done that, I said, okay, so we're going to tick them off as I go through the symptom checker. Kelly, I don't know if, can you go into the symptom checker for me? So when we've done this, sorry, we just need to go into it somewhere else to get the symptom checker up, if that's possible. So when I go into the symptom checker, when I do this, there are about 44 known symptoms of menopause, which is a real eye-opener when we do this kind of event. So just looking at those in no particular order, ranging from hot flushes, which is the most, I would say probably the most well-known one that people put on there. But if you look quickly down that list of the varied symptoms that there are. Go to the next slide, Kelly, please. Yeah. Okay, so that really kind of brings home a couple of things. That everybody's menopause journey is very, very different, and it's incredibly personal to them. And the second one is to not make assumptions about a particular symptom not being representative of a symptom of menopause. And I'll tell you why that's important a little bit later on. So we use that symptom checker for a whole host of things. That could be when somebody comes up to me and says, I feel like this. Do you think it might be the menopause? I give them that so they can cross-reference it with the symptom checker. We also use it for people to start a conversation with their line manager, or to maybe start a conversation with their GP, or to start a conversation at home in their family environment, and to support them in that way. So a really, really useful tool that we use an awful lot in our work around menopause, both internally and externally. So before I go on to just talk about some of the ways in which you can support and things that we've done that have really worked that you might want to try in your organization, I just want to go through a few slides about the breadth of what menopause actually is, because it's a word that's used more recently an awful lot, but I think it's really good to explore some of the detail around it. So although we refer to women throughout this training, it should be noticed that people from the non-binary, transgender and intersex communities may also experience menopausal symptoms. Experiences and perceptions of the menopause also differ in relation to disability, age, race, religion, sexual orientation, marital or civil partnership status. So it's really important that we think about the individual experience of people. And recently, it was World Menopause Day a couple of weeks ago, and the weekend before that, there was a lot of press activity around menopause, and there was one particular article that talked about it. It had almost become and these are their words, not mine, a middle class issue. So a white middle class phenomenon almost, that, it was considered privileged, a privilege to go through the menopause. And what I mean by that, an example of that is that in certain socioeconomic areas that were more affluent areas, the increase in HRT, which is a very common prescription for menopause, the increase in HRT prescriptions have gone up significantly, whereas in more lower socioeconomic areas, it hadn't changed at all. And that's partly because it's still a fee-paying prescription. So for every aspect of menopause support that you get from a doctor, you have to pay a prescription for it. Now, there was a movement earlier in the year to make it an annual prescription rather than every 3 months or a month when you had to go and get it, which comes in next April. So a bit of a swizz, really. The bill was passed on World Menopause Day 2021, but it doesn't actually come in until 2023. And notwithstanding, if you need separate estrogen, progesterone, a gel, that's 3 different prescriptions. So if you in these, I've just noticed that the interest rate's gone up again today. So that means mortgages, rent will go up, cost of everything will go up again. If you're in a situation where you absolutely have to choose between being able to heat your house, put food on the table, or go get some HRT to support you through the menopause, I think it's fair to say that in a lot of areas, that would be your third choice, going for your HRT. And that's what needs to change now, that it's for everybody, not just for people who can afford it. And I'll come on to what the work that the All Political Party Group are doing on that a little bit later on. Kelly, remind me if I have a brain fog moment and forget. The other aspect to it as well is that in certain ethnic areas, there is just, and I'll come on to that as well, there's just no words for it. It's not culturally spoken about. So again, there are large areas of the population where they're absolutely missing out on that vital support. So inclusivity in menopause is really, really important. So there are 3 stages. I'll go to the middle one first, which is menopause. And that's the word we use all the time. It's the catch-all phrase for that whole 3 stages. And menopause is actually a snapshot in time, because it is that time, that moment almost, when you've not had a period for 12 months. So it's only something that you can know in retrospect. The average age of menopause is 51, but perimenopause, which is the stage before that, can happen for 10 years prior to you actually being in menopause, technically. So all those symptoms can happen from very early 40s. And if you go into a very early menopause for a number of reasons, it could be cancer related, cancer treatment related, forced hysterectomy, endometriosis, polycystic ovaries. All of those can influence how early you go into perimenopause. So don't assume that because somebody isn't, sort of just about 50, they won't be experiencing any of those symptoms, because they absolutely could be. So perimenopause is the 10 years prior to menopause, when your body starts to transition towards menopause. And it means your periods can become irregular, your fertility can decline, in the early stages, as it says here, your periods can be erratic, and that actually means that they can be very, very light. Conversely, they can also be incredibly heavy, and that is one of the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause that is by far the most difficult to manage in the workplace, and as you can imagine, is by far one of the most difficult ones to talk about as well for an employee. And if you think about, I'm really honest with my own lived experiences, etc. When I talk about this, and there was a period of time when I worked in sales at the time, when I was in my early to mid 40s, and I felt like I couldn't go to work. I certainly couldn't stand up and present in front of an audience, because I felt like I daredn't stand up. And I had the luxury of being able to work from home, etc., all that sort of thing, and a very understanding line manager. But if you work in a call center, a frontline role, if you're a teacher, if you're a nurse or a doctor, or you work in the blue light services, etc., you absolutely do not have the luxury of saying, I just need to sit down most of today because I don't feel like I dare stand up. So that is something that is really can hugely influence somebody's experience of menopause, not just physically but mentally as well, because the impact on that can be really, really difficult. So definitely one to consider. Hormones can fluctuate throughout perimenopause, which can trigger hot flushes and some of the other many symptoms that we showed you on the symptom checker. And the last sentence of this is really quite important, because I don't know whether it's just exacerbated at the moment, in this generation, but my mum often says to me, I don't know why all this is happening now, because I didn't experience anything. I just got on with it. Well, I get that, but my mum was of a generation where once you'd had your children, you didn't have to work. So you weren't battling that whole, you know, trying to hold down a career, look after maybe aging parents, look after young children. We've got to remain economically active now until we're about 67. So not managing your menopause or not getting the right support around menopause can have a dramatic impact on that in two major ways. One of them is this sentence here about the dramatic loss in estrogen. So even if you didn't have any symptoms, like my mum claimed not to, there is an impact on you, because if you lose that estrogen, you never get it back. And that can have a knock-on effect in later life around osteoporosis, heart disease, and some types of cancer. And so, yeah, those are the main ones. There was another one that I can't remember now, but yeah, so it's really important that you find a way of replacing that estrogen, and HRT can be one of the answers to that. The other thing to consider is that there was some research done, it came out last week, that if you as I said, you have to remain economically active a lot longer now than in previous generations. If you go part-time in your 50s, the impact on your pension pot can be up to £68,000. If you give up work in your 50s, it can be up to £130,000. I'm not sure that in the current climate, many people can afford to lose that. So it's not a luxury to get the support that you need to get through menopause. It's a financial and economic need. So then after that period of time, go into menopause, and this is something you can only know in retrospect. And at this point, you no longer have periods at all. The impact of that can be on individuals can be really, really tough, because obviously no periods means you don't release an egg, which means you can't go on have any more children, and that can also tie in with the time when, if you already have some children, they're going off to university, and it can, from a mental health perspective, can be really challenging. Postmenopause is a term used to describe the period after menopause, and that the symptoms of that, so the symptoms can completely go away, which is brilliant, or in 10% of people, they can carry on for the rest of their life. But the great news is, and this is probably not widely known, but when I did a roundtable event 2 weeks ago for World Menopause Day, we were lucky enough to have a GP on there that specialises in menopause, and they're pretty rare at the moment. And she talked about the fact that you can actually stay on HRT for the rest of your life unless you have some other underlying symptoms. So that is a real support for those people that need it. Any questions on menopause? If you want to put them in the chat, and we can answer those, the 3 stages. Okay. So why are we talking about this? I've shared with you some obviously financial aspects of it, some cultural aspects of it, but it's really important that people get the right support in the workplace. It can make such a huge difference. An example of that is that suicide rates for women aged 45 to 64 have risen 60% in the last 20 years, according to the ONS. And one of those, I'll come back to that question a little bit later on, Karen, if that's okay, but hold that thought. And, the really big impact on mental health. And there's an article there that when we send around the slides at the end, you can take a look at that and see how it is impacted on that particular person. And so we also look at the relationship between work and the menopause. Current evidence highlights the diversity of women's experience, as well as a two-way relationship between menopause and work. If it's managed correctly, as you can see on the right-hand side of the page there, it can deliver benefits to the individual and the business, because if it's managed properly, it can raise confidence, self-belief, and increased energy, which obviously leads to greater output. But the negative side of that, if it's not managed and supported properly, it can lead to fatigue and insomnia and negative work performance and feelings of shame and embarrassment. So it is all about making it work for the individual. And doing nothing is absolutely hurting your business. 75% of businesses don't consider menopause during staff performance reviews for female staff. And that was a survey done by Irwin Mitchell earlier this year. But if you look on the next slide at some of the statistics, so 80% of menopausal women are in the workplace. 50 plus is the fastest growing segment in the workplace. 6 in 10 women say it's had a negative impact on their job. 1 in 5 has left a job because of the menopause. And the research that's been done into that has shown that the more senior the role, the more likely you are to leave because of menopause, because the bigger impact it has on your cognitive ability and your ability, your confidence in that sort of boardroom scenario. So the more senior you are, the more of an impact it has on you. 14 million days, work days are lost due to the menopause and perimenopause, which obviously has a huge impact on businesses. 42% of women have said it affects their ability, but still less than 10% of all UK businesses have a policy. And as I said earlier, the policy is really important to support the people that are not having a positive experience, but for me the policy is simply the catalyst to get the conversation going, to create that culture of support. So obviously there is a huge business case. My perspective is around the individual and the personal experience and how it impacts on individuals, and to support women who are going through that, or people who experience the menopause. But from a business perspective, you only have to look at the stats around the number of people in the workplace, the number of people leaving the workplace, and the impact that would have for any CFOs or CEOs on the call. You know, recruiting costs, onboarding costs, lost productivity, lost engagement, training costs. But the most important, I would say, is the cultural impact. When someone leaves, others take time to ask why. And that has a really lasting impact on businesses. And on the next slide, 2 examples of legal precedent that have really changed the way. It's a bit like the Me Too movement. It has allowed other people to come forward and be heard around their experiences. So currently, menopause isn't a protected characteristic. So when it goes to tribunal, it often ends up being a sex discrimination case. And there's 2 examples here, one going back to 2012, which was against BT, where one of their colleagues, she was being performance managed by her line manager. And he said, you know, you're not performing in your role. And she said, well, I'm not sleeping. I'm having restless leg syndrome, and I've got itchy skin, and I've got having night sweats and things like that. And she I'll come on to that. And she said, I'm having all that because I'm going through the menopause. And he said to her, those aren't symptoms of the menopause, because my wife didn't have those. And he carried on performance managing her, and ultimately she left the business, took them to a tribunal, but which was great for her, because obviously she got a large payout. But also the really key thing was that it highlighted the fact that the menopause is such an individual experience that you shouldn't assume that just because one person didn't experience something, another person wouldn't. So a really key case that went to tribunal there. The second one is around a female finance executive won an age discrimination case. Basically, she set up a business 25 years earlier, and it was actually her business at the time. And then she was called out during a meeting where a 29-year-old male said to her, calm down, don't let the hormones get out of control. She took them to a tribunal, and she won on the grounds that he wouldn't have said that to a male colleague. So again, another precedent there, albeit sex discrimination, but obviously it is menopause related. So it is part of our D&I strategy. It is just one pillar of our D&I strategy, and should be considered as such, because it's very important that people are allowed to bring their whole self to work. So we have included it in all our D&I work, which is a separate, probably a separate call around that entire strategy. But it's really important that we think of it, every aspect of it, from an individual's perspective. And there are the changing face of the menopause I mentioned earlier around the socioeconomic aspect of it, but also of the ethnic and cultural aspect of it. So we launched our policy in two ways. So first of all, before the actual launch on World Menopause Day, we wanted to do some pre-work, because you can't just go out and say, hey, we've got a menopause policy, because actually, if people don't really understand what it is, what the impact of it is, what the conversation is around it, it's a bit of a it's a bit dead in the water, really. So we did a series of podcasts with some senior people in our business who were going through the menopause, and they were really open to sharing their experiences and how it had impacted them. What that did was allow other people in the business, we stored them on our intranet, what that did was allowed other people in the business to think, oh, well, if they can talk about it, why can't I talk about it? And that opened up that conversation. And we've used that strategy with a number of really difficult topics that we've wanted to start the conversation about. And that could be male mental health, it could be period management in the workplace, it could be other aspects of mental health, coming out, how to come out to your family and friends, etc., etc. So all different conversations. We've done those podcasts. So that's what I would call a low cost, high impact method of getting the message out there. The other thing we've done is we hold coffee mornings on a weekly basis. Each forum in our D&I committee hosts one each week. So when it's mine, it's about gender, and that can be all sorts of different topics. But when we did our first menopause one, these are in everybody's diary, 45 minutes every Wednesday morning. You just click on the link and you go into the coffee morning. Again, it works for everybody who's working virtually. Really low cost, but really high impact. If you only take one thing from what I'm talking to you about today that you want to set up in your own organization, I would say those inclusion coffee mornings have probably been our greatest achievement in the last 12 months, because it's opened up the conversation for so many people. And where I was going with that was that we've had people on there who are going through menopause but have never spoken about it before, because in their culture they just simply do not talk about it. It's considered inappropriate. They don't even have the words for it. They couldn't talk to their partner, they couldn't talk to their friends, because it's just not done. So it allowed them to come onto this safe space in their working environment and have that conversation and ask questions. It also allowed some of our partners and husbands in the organization who are from that ethnic and cultural background to ask questions in order to be able to support their partners and family. So it's a very different experience for many people. And just looking there at the different symptoms that are most prolific in different cultures just really shows that everybody's journey is entirely different, and it does open up the conversation and supports people. So I would just, that is a really safe space to allow that to happen if you are in a multicultural environment. I'm just going to go back to one of the questions, which was about how to get male managers involved. And really good question. And honestly, when I've done it with organizations, when we do it internally, we are 66% female, so our gender parity is 66% female across our organization of 2,700 people. We do mandatory training for our managers, so that covers female and male managers, so they get involved in that way. They're heavily involved in the coffee mornings and in our D&I strategy more broadly. But when I've worked with clients who don't have that necessarily gender parity and at leadership level, they've asked me to go in. They're really happy writing their policy and implementing their policy, but for the training aspect of it, they've found it easier to bring somebody else in to launch that. And the reason they've done that is because they, as an HR person in the organization, to start to talk about, I've already talked about some aspects of my journey that they probably wouldn't want to sit down to talk about and then have to sit next to them in the canteen the following day. So when I've gone in, I've said to them, you'll probably never see me again, so ask me whatever you want and I will answer you honestly. You can't embarrass me, and I'm here to help you and to help you to help your colleagues. And that's worked really well, that and the menopause bingo, because it was a good icebreaker. But what I found was we started off talking about it from a very work related perspective, but then after a while many of them were asking me how they questions that were clearly about their relationships outside of work, whether that was with a partner or family, etc. And I was able to help them in that way. And then I've literally left them with all the tools. They've got the manager's handbook, and they've got the colleagues handbook, they've got the symptom checker, they've got all that to work with. And then they can just carry on doing that themselves rather than do it internally. So that has worked really well for them. So I hope that answered your question. And if I can do that to help you, I'm more than happy to do that. Okay, Kelly, can you move on to the next slide, please? I'm just conscious of time. So how do you support your colleagues? So as I said earlier, create a menopause policy. That's a really good conversation starter, a really good catalyst to get the conversation going. And the more and more organisations that have it, the more normal it will be to talk about this really key period in somebody's life. Roughly 50% of the population are going to go through it. 80% of those people are in the workplace. So we need to talk about it. And what we've found is that talking about having a menopause policy has allowed us to broaden out our female health policy as well. Once we started making menopause a normal part of conversation, in the workplace, it's enabled us to talk about period management in the workplace and what we're going to do to support that as well, partly for people who are going through perimenopause and menopause, or any other endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, etc., or I just need to manage their periods better in the workplace and have that support to do so and open that conversation. We had a coffee morning a few weeks ago called Bloody Hell, We're Talking About Periods. Now, I'm pretty sure that if we hadn't have launched the menopause policy and opened up that conversation a year ago, I would not have been able to host a coffee morning called Bloody Hell, We're Talking About Periods. So I think it's part of a much broader conversation on female health. So in our policy, we put what the scope of it was, who does it apply to, what the aims and principles of it were, what are we committing to, and what support can you expect if you need to invoke the policy. We put the definitions in because I think that's a really important learning curve for people to understand. If you said to somebody, what is a menopause and when does it happen? People generally say it means you don't have any periods anymore and it happens when you're 51. I mean, that is really undermining the whole experience for somebody who's going through it. So that education piece in the policy, really important. What are the most common symptoms? And we did put it, we use the symptom checker in conjunction with the policy, but we've listed the most I would say the most usual symptoms, and the ones that can impact on work more as well, like the hot flushes, the lack of sleep, and on all those associated symptoms. Roles and responsibilities for colleagues and managers. What do we expect of our managers? What do we expect of colleagues to manage their own menopause? You can't just suddenly go into work and say, I'm going through perimenopause. What are you going to do about it? It's like any any life experience. And we also offer in the policy additional support from our employee assistance programs linked to internal programs and external support organisations. And I'll talk to you a bit about the internal programs in a moment. The second thing that we advise people to do is familiarize yourself with the toolkits. If you haven't got a toolkit, that we can help you to create that, and we can help you roll it out to your management team. So this is just an example of what they look like from our perspective. And this is the colleague one. And in a couple of slides time, I'll go through a few more of the details, but there's a lot of resources in there to support people as well. And then we've done, and use the symptom checker to support those conversations. We find that's a really invaluable tool for people. Particularly if you're going to see your GP, because as I said earlier, I'm really lucky that I found a GP that would support us in our work, but they are really, really difficult to find. Before I go into this, I'll just mention that actually the All Political Party group headed up by Carolyn Harris, the MP, put their recommendations to Parliament the week before World Menopause Day, and there were 3 really key recommendations that came out of that, and it supports some of the conversation that we've just been having around the fact that not everybody is getting access to support, and so the key recommendation of the APPG was that every woman at 45 has a menopause health check, and what that would do is ensure that everybody was getting the support, or more broadly, if they took that up, it would mean that it wasn't just people who felt confident enough to go to the doctor, or who felt like they could afford the prescription, or they knew what other support they needed, etc. It was for everybody. So I think that is a really big step forward. The 2 things that I think impinge on that as well, which were the other 2 main points of it. The second one was better training for GPs. So every GP practice would have a menopause specialist, which I think it has been a long time coming. On average, people are misdiagnosed 3 times when they go see their GP, and very often, and I've got colleagues across the business who were on antidepressants that absolutely needlessly and should have been on HRT, but they were misdiagnosed. So that GP training is super important. The third thing that ties into that fundamentally is the HRT prescription. So it's okay acknowledging that, yes, you are in menopause, and yeah, I've seen a doctor and they've told me what I need, but actually I can't afford to get the support that I need. And actually, and I know somebody's asked a question about non-HRT methods of support, and I'll come back to that before we finish, but they all cost money because they're not on a prescription. So it's really, there's an imbalance there between what the support is and the access and being able to afford it. So how this part of this is in the toolkit. So how to have a menopause conversation as a manager. So it's not easy, and that's why it's important that they have the support and the training to be able to do it. So ask simple, open, non-judgmental questions, avoid patronizing responses like the guy from BT, speak calmly, maintain good eye contact, avoid interruptions. Really important that when somebody wants to talk about something difficult like that, they get the time and exposure that they need. Give them ample opportunity to explain the situation in their own words. They may not have anybody else to talk to, and it could be a big step to actually have a conversation with their manager. But if you think, if they live alone, or they don't have family around them, or they live in a community where it's not talked about, this may be the first time they've started to broach that subject. Be prepared for silences and be patient. Focus on the person, not the problem. Everybody's journey is entirely different. Show empathy and understanding. Encourage the employee to talk and listen actively and carefully. And then we just touch on the topic of workplace adjustments and leave management. So There are absolute leave management is always a big one from an HR perspective. I absolutely know that. So I can only talk about how we manage it, and we manage it simply as we're very lucky that we have a lot of flexible working still in our business, because our business lends itself to flexible working. So on any given day, if somebody is struggling with some of their symptoms and it would be better for them to work from home, pretty much we allow that opportunity. So, but as I said earlier, we're not teachers, we're not nurses, we're not frontline workers, and that experience is really different for people who are in that environment. So but if somebody does need to take a day off, we don't make them take it as a sick day. So it is literally that they do what they can when they can. But the other aspect of that is making reasonable adjustments. And the thing I would say with this is, as we've already said, post-menopause, those symptoms can go on for many years after, in a small proportion of people. But if you're committing to something, you need to be sure that you can support them for a long period of time, or as their journey evolves. So you could start off with one set of symptoms and actually they turn into a different set of symptoms. But ask them what could help them, what would be of support to them. I'll give you an example of how, so I had really, really bad hot flushes before I started HRT, and I happened to work in an office where it was all glass, and so I had my own office, but it was all glass windows, and it opened up onto a flight path and an airport runway, so it didn't have any windows that open for obvious reasons. So my line manager, who was a male, gave me a fan, a floor fan, which literally, he'd even put a sticker on it that said Helen's fan. So he thought that he was doing me a really good turn. It was delighted that he'd given me this fan that said Helen's fan on it to help me when I was having a hot flush. And it was great, but it also, everybody started saying to me, why have you got a fan and I haven't got a fan, and blah, blah, because it was quite a warm office. And then we had a night team in this particular environment. So somebody might pinch my fan in the night and then I'd have to go and ask my fan back. And, I feel like I'm quite a confident person. If I wasn't, that could have actually made me feel a whole lot worse than it made me feel better, because of the conversations I was having to start with people. To get my fan back almost, or explain why I got this flipping stand-up fan. The other impact of it was that we every time I went to a meeting, I had to wheel my fan with me, and then when I got to whatever room, boardroom or whatever, I had to find somewhere to plug my fan in, make sure I could sit near my fan for it to have maximum impact, because there's nothing worse than having a really bad hot flush in the middle of a meeting. But yeah, I had to take my fan with me. In the end, they got me a smaller fan, a desk fan. So I just had to carry my desk fan through the office and pop that on my table and plug that in. But my point being is, it can be that as a manager, you think, oh, I've solved that problem. I've given them a fan. That's going to make them feel a whole lot better. When actually it could make them feel a whole lot worse, because it's drawing attention to them. So it's better to ask what's going to work than make any assumption. Yeah, literally, I might as well have a sticker across my head that said menopausal woman, but So yeah, and there's other things that can really, really help people. Kelly, can you just move on to the next slide? So yeah, so sleep disruption is a really, really big trigger in menopause, and the sleep disruption can come from a number of other symptoms. So it could be restless leg syndrome. Honestly, I didn't even know that was a thing, but my line manager struggles with it, and she has to take magnesium to help her relax her legs enough to be able to go to sleep. Hot sweats in the night, that sort of thing, itchy skin, lots of different things that the impact of it is lack of sleep. So that flexible working arrangement can really help. And again, the hot flushes and daytime sweats. My best friend is a sister in accident and emergency in the second largest A&E in the country. So you can imagine being in menopause, in COVID, wearing nylon uniform and full PPE. I mean, it was a horrendous experience. So yeah, there's some aspects of it that you may not be able to change somebody's uniform, but you could provide them with, you know, a fan if it's what they want, maybe a little one, and cold drinking water, etc., regular breaks to be able to support them. As I touched on before, heavy and irregular periods can be incredibly debilitating, depending on the, well, to be honest, it's incredibly debilitating anywhere, just from a life perspective, and can result in iron deficiency, etc., etc. But that can be, yeah, incredibly difficult for somebody. So having sanitary products available in washrooms, allow them to, you know, go for frequent breaks without asking them where they're going, extra uniform if they need it, etc. And headaches and fatigue, again, you know, temporary adjustments to someone's duties, allowing them to work from home, regular breaks, etc. It's just being thoughtful, but obviously understanding what some of the key thing is, understanding what the symptoms are, what the impact of the symptoms are, and then you can talk about how you can support somebody through that, and ask them what they need. And creating a safe space for talking for all colleagues. I think I did touch on it earlier, but if I just want to go back over this, because I honestly believe that this has changed how we work as an organisation, what our culture is. And if I can just offer you one tip to go away and do, this would be my offering, that our coffee mornings have created so much opportunity for people to just talk, be heard, to learn. We do them on our pillars of our D&I strategy, which is education, networking, support, and celebration. So sometimes we have a guest speaker, sometimes we have a slide deck which educates, sometimes it's just an open forum where people can go on and talk and ask questions, but every week our numbers are growing incrementally. They've grown by 50% over from the first half of the year to the second half of the year. We publish what the topic is going to be at the start of every week, and people just jump on and really take a lot away from those coffee mornings. Low cost, zero cost, really high impact. On the back of that, we've created a menopause network, which has actually now broadened out more into something that we call Tag Talk, so the Adecco Group Talk. We have 30 volunteers who want to be somebody that people can come and talk to if they've got an issue. They've all got lived experience of something that we have covered through our D&I coffee mornings. So we've got people on there who want to be somebody that they can be approached about mental health, baby loss awareness, menopause, irregular periods, fertility journey, IVF, coming out, being trans, etc. A whole host of domestic violence, a whole host of topics. So, and we set up a training for them, support, guiding principles for them, to make sure that they're well supported. And the mechanism simply is, if you fill in a form anonymously, it goes to a person who has got relevant experience in what you want somebody to talk to about, and you set that network up. And then if they need further support, we've got resources, but we also signpost to obviously EAPs, mental health first aiders if appropriate, and that's been born out of those coffee mornings and our D&I work. So literally a network of people that you can share your experiences with and get support from that, and that sense of community and inclusion. we also have a monthly, just menopause only coffee morning now called Hot Topics, where people can just jump on it and share tips, just have a chat, you know, to talk about their experiences, what they might be using, homeopathic remedies, etc., etc. And a Teams channel that goes with that, so people can just pop in, you know, books that they've read. A lot of people are reading the Davina book at the moment, me included. Put those in the chat, etc., to support. And that's how we're creating that allyship and support mechanism across the business. And our Meno Mates, which started off as our working title, but to be honest, we've kept it as Meno Mates, and that is a network of people who are part of the Tag Talk that want to support other people going through menopause. All of those are quite simply just people's time, a little bit of input on resource, etc., but really zero cost and high impact. And as Kelly has just quite rightly said, that has had a significant impact on our engagement scores for our PCON that we do. Engagement on D&I and wellbeing scores have risen quarter by quarter since we started the coffee mornings last January. So I hope in that session, I've no idea what time it is. We've got 10 minutes left. So I hope I've given you a sense of the journey that we've been on, how we can support you in your journey if that's what you need, and how important it is to have that. I think we've moved from inclusion to a sense of belonging almost, and as a different example to this, I know that there are people that have come to me and said being able to open up about their menopause experience and get more support has been life-changing for them. And I don't think they, you know, I take that really seriously, and I feel like it's a privilege to be able to support people. We also have somebody in our organisation who she focuses supporting our baby loss journey as part, baby loss awareness as part of our whole fertility piece that we're doing from a D&I perspective. She's been with the business over 30 years, and it was the first time she had ever felt she could talk about her baby loss experience, and she's had a number of miscarriages in that time. And I think that has really makes people think that opening up that conversation, creating that sense of belonging is really powerful in an organization. So I just want to invite questions now. We'll go back through the chat. Kelly, if you take the slides down so I can see people, that'd be great. And then, yeah, if you've got any questions, if there's anything we can do to support, we will be delighted to be able to do that. I'm just going to quickly look at the question. I can't look at questions and talk. So I noticed that somebody asked about estrogen, and if I'm on, obviously I'm not medically trained. My background is recruitment and HR. So I would suggest that it would be more of homeopathic remedies that you would be able to look into and speak to a medical professional about that. But there are a number of different types of HRT, and it can be patches, gel, or the tablet, and they work for different people in different ways depending on any underlying conditions that you may have. How can we identify and narrow down to what our employee is actually going through? So yeah, the symptoms are similar to other conditions, absolutely. But if they wanted to go to a GP, obviously you can't force them to do that. When I started to go through menopause, I had a blood test, and that defined whether I was in menopause or I was experiencing something else. So I would suggest that, and that list of symptoms and maybe ticking off ones that were applicable would be a really good starting point. I think I covered getting male managers involved. If anybody wants to ask anything else on that, please shout out. And you're absolutely right. GPs are massively under-resourced, and it is really challenging. Yeah, Kelly, I agree. I should have had an arrow that said I was having hot flushes. So anybody else got any questions that they want to I've just seen that running a menopause writing policy. I thought, oh, I wonder who that is. I've just realised it's us. Thanks, Kelly. So yeah, we absolutely are. We are running a policy workshop on the 10th of November. If you want to join us and learn more about, how you can really flesh out a compelling menopause policy, please feel free to join us. Drop us a note, and you're more than welcome to join us and share your experiences as well. So any other questions that want to go in the chat? No. Okay. So as I say, we will be sending round something different how we do anyone from an ethnic background. That's a really good question, and I think it is about I would say creating that opportunity. Do some research about the different predominant symptoms dependent on ethnicity, etc. But the thing I would say is create that safe space for the conversation, and whether that be a drop-in clinic, a drop-in centre, a coffee morning, or just having starting up a group chat, etc., to how you can broaden up that conversation, because you've got to get knowing that there are ethnic groups that don't talk about it at all. You've almost got to get them to come to you. So creating that safe space where it's very private is really important. And that's what we've done through working with our ethnicity forum to get a better understanding from them. So that's how we got to that. Some of the ethnic demographics you referred to. Our content at the moment isn't available in different languages. Unfortunately, I would say this is our hobby as opposed to our day job. So I'm really sorry, but I'm sure there is resource online that you can find to support that. Okay, so unless anybody's got any more questions, thank you very, very much for your time. Via our colleagues at LHH, we will be getting the information out to you. But if anybody wants to contact us, please do, and join us on our menopause policy session. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of day. It's been a pleasure.